Mr. Speaker, for the last 4 years, I've had the privilege to occupy the office of the Minister of Tourism and Entertainment for Jamaica. I'd like to thank the Leader of the Opposition for having placed their confidence in me to do that job. Mr. Speaker, all of us here, our work is made easier because of the support that we get from our family. And I'd like to acknowledge my family who is in the gallery. My wife Sheila and my 2 children, Ashley and Jordan. I had the privilege of going to Ashley's graduation last month, which was a good opportunity, and I'm looking forward, Jordan, next year to going to yours when you finish dental school. I also want to acknowledge, Mr. Speaker, my mother.
Oh, wow.
And, Mr. Speaker, I want to also thank, as all of us here, constituents of West and Westmoreland who continue to repose their confidence in me. I'd like to thank my former Minister of State, Damian Crawford, and of course, my sister Fiona and Polly, who keep my office going from day to day. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank the persons in the Ministry of Tourism and the other government ministries that worked so hard with us over the last 4 years. And last but by no means least, the members of the entire tourism family who worked so closely with me along this journey and who, through their hard work and appreciation for the value of the industry, have all played critical roles. Mr. Speaker, the last 4 years have been an exciting ride, and I think they have been good for the country. We have made tremendous progress in tourism, and it's a great sense of pride, not just for me, but I think it should be a sense of pride for all Jamaica, where Jamaica is positioned now in the world. Over the last 2 years, we passed certain milestones. One of the milestones we passed is that for the first time as a country, we welcomed over 2 million stopover visitors to Jamaica. A tremendous milestone. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the minister made mention of the fact that Jamaica is now one of 4 countries. We are one of only 4 countries in the Caribbean that get more than 2 million visitors, and we passed that milestone, and Jamaica is looking positive going forward. Mr. Speaker, when you add cruise arrivals, we welcomed over 3.5 million visitors last year. It was not just the welcoming of visitors, but also on the international stage, we broke ground. For the first time in history, Jamaica chaired the Executive Council of the United Nations World Tourism Organization. Little Jamaica. We were able, I served for 2 years as Vice President and served as Chairman of the Council. And when you consider this is a council of all the ministers of tourism in the world, it was the first time that a minister from an English-speaking Caribbean country had that privilege. Mr. Speaker, we also made tremendous legislative changes. We passed the Timeshare Act, the Community Tourism Bill, and at the same time, we went through and changed the Hotels Incentives Act, which had been there for many years, and put in place a Fiscal Incentives Act, which was more fair to the entire sector. We also made the amendments to the JTB Act, which are now ready to go to Cabinet. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to just make mention, one of the things that the Minister has done is given an assurance in our discussions that all of these policies and programs that were in place, he's going to follow through on them and has given that commitment. And I want to commend him for the approach that he has taken to that. I know you're working on that. But, Mr. Speaker, an important thing that happened is that investment returned to the sector in a way that it has not probably in the history of our country. Mr. Speaker, in the last 4 years up to the end of 2015, over $80 billion was invested in the tourism sector in Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, when you look at what exists in Jamaica now as opposed to what we took over, you look at the sort of refurbishing and renewal of the properties that are there. If you look at properties now like Melia, Moon Hyatt, all of these have gone through a total transformation. What we offer as a product, we have lifted the product of the entire sector. At the same time, a confidence returned to the sector. And a lot of this confidence was because with the arrivals that were coming in, occupancies went up. And because occupancies went up, more money was there to be made. And so investment returned to the sector. And so properties that were closed, places like Breezes, have now been bought, and you're going to see a Spanish Town West in Montego Bay. Or the Wyndham, which was under fire, which had the fire. Wyndham has now been bought and is going to be refurbished. And lately, just recently, I heard that Palmyra has now has been sold. And so it means that the investment returned to the sector. But more importantly, during the last 2 years to now, over 2,500 new rooms are being built in Jamaica. Now, when you take into account the fact that we have 20,000 hotel rooms, when you get 2,500 new rooms, that's nearly 12% of your existing room stock is now new room stock. It transforms Jamaica, it brings new product on. And anybody who drives on the North Coast now, and you look at Bahia Principe, or you pass by Secrets and see Breathless, or go and see the Grand Lido, or Sectoral, Royalton, all of these are now being done. New rooms, investment coming to Jamaica. And Mr. Speaker, we left in place on the drawing board in the planning phase over 12,500 rooms that were to be built. I saw yesterday that the minister came and relaunched Charisma. But these are major investments. And Mr. Speaker, during this 4-year period, the point that I want to make is that Jamaica's tourism sector underwent a tremendous transformation. And we have set the foundation, set the stage for the most aggressive expansion of the tourism sector in Jamaica than we have ever seen. So, Mr. Speaker, one of the things that comes up from time to time is whether or not you could have more aggressive growth, whether we could have more arrivals and our growth in arrivals. But to do that, you have to have the investment, because when you have more rooms, you have the ability to grow because you have to fill those rooms. And Mr. Speaker, the stage now is set for Jamaica's tourism sector to have growth for years to come. There's a solid foundation.
Solid foundation.
However, Mr. Speaker, if I were to be asked what is the most significant achievement of my recent term in office, it would be that we were able to change the mindset as to the true potential value of a thriving tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, have changed the focus of how we measure the success of this vital industry. We no longer simply count the visitor arrivals, the number of flights that come to the country, foreign exchange earnings. Equally important now is the impact tourism can have on the social and economic development of the people of Jamaica. You know, Mr. Speaker, in the last term, the former minister used to be the chief salesman. This must be about being the chief policy maker, because it is the impact that tourism can have on the lives of every single Jamaican and on the earning potential of every single Jamaican. Mr. Speaker, we shifted the ministry's focus from concentrating solely on sales and marketing to examining how best to maximize the socio-economic benefits to the people of Jamaica. So therefore, we put in place policies and programs that would reflect this paradigm shift. I want to just name out some of these policies and programs. One, the linkages program. Mr. Speaker, this program is one of the most impactful programs that has been developed in this country. Mr. Speaker, we were able to build out a linkages hub, which has been very successful. We did the demand study. The minister brought the demand study here yesterday. Important study. It shows the tremendous potential that there is to fulfill in tourism. But it did something even more importantly. When I became minister, one of the difficulties is that there was a little bit of a contentious relationship between tourism and other sectors, manufacturing, agriculture, because there was always a feeling that they got incentives and did not give back. Today, tourism, agriculture, manufacturing, all the sectors are now working closely together, developing Jamaica, because they know, through information, they now know the importance one to the other. And when I knew it had really worked well, and I made a joke of it, is last year, when the Jamaica Manufacturers Association had its AGM, the guest speaker was a hotelier. This was a tremendous breakthrough because it shows that we are now working together to develop Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, there's more potential involved, because when you look at the linkages, we're developing it locally. And those manufacturers or agriculture that can serve our sector, they have to be efficient. They have to have the quantity, the quality, and the value. So once they become world competitive, there's no boundaries. So already a lot of the local manufacturers have spread out throughout the Caribbean. And there's more. And so when people ask me about what's happening with Cuba, one of the things is it's not just multi-destination travel, but the opportunities that exist in Cuba for Jamaican manufacturers, for Jamaican attractions, for all the things that we offer. There's a tremendous market in Cuba. And through the linkages, we must work to develop these markets as well. So, Speaker, so linkages was one of those programs. Another one was to extend the benefits of tourism island-wide. We wanted to extend it island-wide. We developed a community tourism policy, tabled it in Parliament, and we're working now on doing the first pilot project in Treasure Beach, where we will open up. The member was with me at one of the meetings there. We want to start off there and set an example so that we can get this community tourism like a wave across the country, because it gets tourism in the hands of the people. Here, here. Another project we did in extending it island-wide was the TIPS program, the infrastructural program, where we worked with the ministry, with members of Parliament in this House. Yes, yes, and the reason we were doing it, Mr. Speaker, is we wanted these projects to go out because it allows the visitors to leave the properties and go the length and breadth of the island. True. So when you look at programs like Portland East, the road that carried down to Buff Bay, or similarly, Portland East, Portland West. In Portland East, we did Berrydale Road to allow us for rafters rest. The member from Trelawney South with the sports tourism stadium, or the member from, I think it's Southwest St. Catherine with Terminal Beach. The member from Manchester with Maidstone Museum. All of these projects, GC Foster College in St. Catherine, the member from Central Camden with his studio. In other words, these were projects that spread tourism, not just international, but local tourism across the length and breadth of the island. It makes it important to Jamaican people. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we refurbish cultural sites, Port Royal, the Naval Hospital, Seville, Montego Bay Civic Center. Mr. Speaker, an important project for Jamaica, the beaches program. We must continue the beaches program where we are going to secure beaches. We put 150 million. I've already opened Burwood Beach and Boston Beach. But the beaches program must continue. We must secure these beaches for Jamaicans in perpetuity so we own our beaches and can enjoy them. Mr. Speaker, the rest stop program, where we're doing rest stops across the entire island. The Excellence in Schools program, where we were doing schools, where we're doing projects in schools to train them. Photography, member from Northeast St. Anga, where they work in the schools so that they can go into the sector. Mr. Speaker, all of these projects were to allow Jamaicans to benefit from tourism, not just bring the visitors, but benefit. So, Speaker, our tourism workers are amongst the best in the world. That's why we're so highly rated. You know, Mr. Speaker, one tourism writer in New York noted that the visitors come for the heat of the sun, but they stay for the warmth of the people. So, Mr. Speaker, from a policy perspective, I was determined to definitively address the issue of pensions for tourism workers. Mr. Speaker, we got the consensus and agreement of the JHTA, set up a committee chaired by Daisy Cook to examine all the available options, went to Cabinet and got approval for the establishment of a defined contribution pension fund. And Mr. Speaker, we put everything in place for it to start, for this pension to start January 2017, January of next year. In discussion with the Minister, I say to the Minister, this will be the most transformational thing that is done in the tourism sector since the formation of the JTB. And I want us to continue and ensure that it is done. And he will have all of our support in ensuring that it happens. Mr. Speaker, the other long-term benefit for housing, for tourism workers is housing. And I just want to make mention that the Prime Minister mentioned it in his speech and says that they will be proceeding with the program. And Mr. Speaker, it's important, and I'm happy that he made mention of it, because it will allow us to develop organized communities and provide decent, affordable housing for our workers. So, Mr. Speaker, that's where the sector is now. I just want to make a few points on the way forward. And again, I think that there's a level of consensus where the ministry, there are a lot of things we're working on, and it is something that we need to do as a country. There's a saying, Mr. Speaker, that if you don't know where you're going, any road can take you there. We need to know clearly where we want to go in Jamaica and chart a precise route. Change is not only constant but inevitable. So we must continuously redefine the tourism sector we want, the Jamaica we want, and work diligently to achieve these objectives. Tourism is and must continue to be a main catalyst for economic growth. We must ensure that the framework is in place to facilitate integration and participation in the sector by even more Jamaicans. To ensure this, Mr. Speaker, there are some policy initiatives that must be addressed, and I just want to make mention of a few. The success of Brand Jamaica and the performance of the sector means that we can look forward to our next milestone, which will be 3 million visitors. Yes. But how do we take full advantage of this? How do we expand our linkages with farmers, manufacturers, artists, entertainers, vendors, and other service providers to meet the resultant increase in demand? And there are some things that we need to look at. One, how do we expand the job opportunities, especially at the very high end, engineers, financial controllers, and managers? I want to make the point that the Minister made mention of this yesterday, and I want to make a suggestion, something we were looking at, Minister, and that is talking to the Ministry of Labour and saying to them that let's look at reciprocal relationships. A lot of the companies that work are multinational, and what they do is they bring in managers at certain levels. What we need to do is have a quid pro quo. They can bring in, but they must take persons from Jamaica out and train them and get them up on those levels as well, so that we have both persons coming in but going out. But Mr. Speaker, our workers are going to have to understand that they're going to have to be bilingual and trilingual and quadrilingual, because a lot of these countries that they're going to are different languages. Mr. Speaker, there are some other things. We need to carve out spaces for small Jamaican companies in the industry to ensure that they can compete with many of the vertically integrated companies, our Jutas, Jacals, Maxis. With the advent of Airbnb and like programs and the opportunities they provide for tourism to the wide range of persons, we need to seize this opportunity for ordinary Jamaicans to become entrepreneurs in the industry. Hear, hear. Government has to facilitate more Jamaican participation in ownership of profitable segments of the tourism industry through the work of developmental institutions like the Development Bank of Jamaica. And Mr. Speaker, we need to look at how do we maximize and retain profits and foreign exchange earnings for the benefits of more Jamaicans. Mr. Speaker, only with increased participation and ownership, with benefits spreading to the wider cross-section of the Jamaican population, will we ensure social cohesion, acceptance and protection by every Jamaican for the tourism industry. Mr. Speaker, we must seek answers to these burning questions and bear in mind existing obligations of all international treaties and restrictions, especially GATS, the General Agreement on Trade and Services, of which we are part. We must find ways to ensure that our nationals are not overrun. Many Caribbean countries, such as Cayman, Bahamas, Barbados, Mexico, and Domrep, all have some protection for their nationals. We need to examine these issues as a matter of urgency, as we do not want to seek to close the gate after the horse has bolted. Retroactive rules and regulations are never welcome, and I urge immediate consideration of these issues. In closing, Mr. Speaker, our beloved country, Jamaica, is at a critical crossroads on its journey. In pursuit of happiness, wealth creation, social justice, and the pursuit of happiness, wealth creation, social justice, and the certainty that this is a place for us to raise families and do business. Our people are rapidly losing confidence and faith in our socio-economic and political institutions to help them realize their dreams and aspirations. Aspirations to acquire their own home, to educate their children well, to live in safety, whether in their home or when they use the streets of their country. They're losing confidence in us, their political leaders, to create the opportunities for them to earn, save, and build generational wealth. They cry ever so often, indeed too often, about a system of justice, law and order that discriminates against them because of where they live and their lack of status in this Jamaica of 2016. Mr. Speaker, we are all being summoned to lift our game. I have been in the public service through politics for 19 years now. I have seen the attempts at economic and political reforms and social re-engineering from the 1970s to the present focus. On getting the macroeconomic fundamentals right. Getting the economic fundamentals right is absolutely crucial if we are to deliver a sustainable and better way of life for our people. Mr. Speaker, that is impatient of debate. And with due respect, Mr. Speaker, the recent Portia Simpson-Miller-led administration made tremendous gains towards getting these fundamentals right. However, Mr. Speaker, the big challenges confronting us are more than economic in nature. They have more to do with how do we get Jamaica functioning as an efficient and caring society. How do we get our people better trained for the global marketplace as not only providers of labor, but also as informed and active participants in the process of governance that is open, fair and transparent at both the national and local levels? How do we seriously unlock their entrepreneurial talents and skills through greater access to affordable credit? And how do we make the economic and social structures of capital and financing blind and entirely based on merit? Mr. Speaker, we the political leaders have more often than not, been afraid to call a spade and then act to fix this country's deep-seated problems. I'm not talking here about a silver bullet. The problems are multidimensional and have been in the making for centuries. Let us just take a few of the social ones. The breakdown in our family structures, children having children, men simply taking it as a badge of honor to be breeders, yes. Not fathers, yes. Not parents. Yes. Indeed, we celebrate from the musical and political stages the fact yes, that a man earned him stripes because he have enough yes, girls. Mr. Speaker, we are paying a heavy, heavy price as a country and as an economy for that behavior and practice. Mr. Speaker, look at what crime is costing us in terms of pain, grief, and just plain cash. How many of those unfathered children end up in a life of crime or in a PATH program? True. How many end up in a slew of remedial programs? True. Because they did not make it through the formal school system. Mr. Speaker, let us commit here and now across the political divide that we are going to call out the social evils eating away at Jamaica. Hear, hear. Hear, hear. And most importantly, we must act in setting goals to stem the erosion of the social fabric of our nation. Hear, hear. I'm begging your protection, Mr.
What a PMP business. What a PMP business.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a member of Parliament, in an increasingly crime-affected rural parish and a former Minister of Tourism, I have been confronting the twin threats of social erosion and the constant companion of death and violence throughout Jamaica. This erosion feeds crime. And frankly, Mr. Speaker, we have been asking the constabulary force to solve social problems.
Members' time for speaking has
Mr.
expired.
Speaker, I move that the members' time be extended by 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleagues. Mr. Speaker, we have been asking the constabulary force to solve social problems. They are not welfare workers. Mr. Speaker, it is time for us to revisit the strategic review report on how to fix the Jamaica Constabulary Force, completed 8 years ago. No one can dispute the fact that the world has seen tremendous change since, and so has Jamaica. In its time, it was very well researched. We agreed that the analysis was first-rate, and in discussions with the former minister, he reminded me that the report was again updated in 2014. But, Mr. Speaker, have the recommended solutions brought the desired results? In light of the current situation and the intensification of the problem, we need to take a hard look at the recommended solutions and their appropriateness for now. And further, we need to assess the effectiveness of the implementation. Mr. Speaker, we have no time to lose. We must also re-examine closely the social interventions we have designed and measure their effectiveness in light of today's realities. Mr. Speaker, the continuing growth and benefits of tourism to the wider economy, if carefully managed, can make a contribution to our nation's growth. It can become a major tool of development as we confront the challenges and troubling issues I referenced. Let us work together across the political divide, in the public and private sectors, in partnership with our citizens, to ensure that we build on the progress that we have made in the tourism sector for the benefit of all Jamaicans. Mr. Speaker, it was a great Shakespeare who said in Julius Caesar, there comes a time in the tide of affairs of men when taken at the flood leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyages of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose our ventures. Mr. Speaker, let us all seize the moment. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I thank my colleagues for their attention.